Welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's get to it. So when Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene showed up on The View, it wasn't the viral chaos that some expected. It was something better, a real conversation. Now, let's be clear, Greene has built her brand as one of the loudest MAGA voices in Congress. But lately, she's been doing something rare in Washington, turning her megaphone back on her own party. Now, during a recent government shutdown fight, she took aim squarely at Republicans, saying that many Americans, even those outside her base, have been thinking for years. Take a look.
Healthcare costs have risen and risen and risen and risen. But I'm going to pick on Republicans. Republicans never fixed it. And then the ACA tax credits were passed in 2021, and there was a sunset date of the end of this year. And Republicans never made a plan for that. And I yelled at Mike Johnson last week on our GOP conference call.
Now, Greene didn't stop there. She kept pressing, not for more rhetoric, but for more policy.
I hope that Mike Johnson is finally giving a single health care policy because the country deserves it, and it shouldn't be a secret. And I shouldn't have to go into a skiff to go find our Republican health insurance plan.
Maybe
Honestly,
there is no plan.
You know what? You want to know something? That, I believe, is the truth. There's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of bills, but there's no consensus. And I think that's a failure.
Whether you agree with her politics or not, Greene is doing something we don't see enough in D.C., calling out her own team. She's criticized the Trump administration's military actions in Iran, labeled Israel's war in Gaza a genocide, and demanded transparency in the Epstein investigation, even when it made Republican leaders uncomfortable. Reportedly, Trump himself has asked senior GOP members what's going on with Marjorie. Maybe what's going on is that she's finally realizing that what many Americans know. The problems that divide us aren't always about left or right. Sometimes they're about accountability. Now, Greene noted that she appreciated the conversation between her and the other 5 hosts, and it had been, quote, professional and kind, and thinks more calm discourse needs to happen nationwide. Now, no matter where you stand politically, this kind of honest across the aisle conversation is what the country's been starving for. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, can sit across from the View table and admit her own side's failures and defend things she believes in as well, like immigration reform, then maybe, just maybe, there's hope that more people in Washington will start telling the truth too and get back to work.
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting interview that she did on The View. I'm glad she is perfectly comfortable talking to people that she doesn't maybe agree with all the time or would have even been hostile in the past. And the ladies of The View were perfectly respectful of her. Now, maybe it's easy for them to be respectful when she's mostly saying things that are critical of Republicans, but it was a worthwhile conversation. And I've said many times I like and agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene's independent streak, hers and Massey's and others. I don't quite see it the same way she does on every single one of these issues. I do on most of them. I agree with her on Epstein, although we have some differences. I agree with her on foreign policy, Iran, Israel, etc. And I agree that Republicans have had all the time in the world to come up with a better health care plan, and they didn't. They haven't prioritized this, and that goes to the Speaker. I don't think his answers on this have been particularly persuasive. So good for her, and I hope she continues to have conversations with everybody. I've never met her in person. We've interviewed her on Rising once or twice, and she was very gracious, I think, even from the perspective of the person sitting in the liberal chair. She seems like a warm and open-minded person, and I appreciate having someone like that in Congress.
I wanted to ask you what you thought about something else she said on the show. I didn't want to play the whole show, but she talked about how she thinks that there are paid influencers in the MAGA base that are paid to basically just do whatever the MAGA base is asking. So she felt like she got attacked specifically by paid influencers just for saying she's going on The View or just for criticizing lately. And she said that I know a lot of people were sharing and retweeting that, like, wow, you think people are getting paid to do this? But the way you describe it, and you're more active on social media than I am, is that this infighting is allowed. We fight in public, where Democrats maybe sweep it under the rug and fight. Like with Kamala, you see the book come out, and then they talk about the fighting, but they pretend like it didn't happen in real time. So break that down for me about if there's real drama.
The paid influencing thing is very complicated. Actually, Kamala's a good example because there was a lot of trending Kamala back when she became the candidate. Remember Brat Kamala?
Yeah, Brat the Green.
But that was
well, that was a Charlie XCX song, so it actually
fine. But we learned that this was heavily manufactured, and the Democratic elites had paid influencers to kind of manifest this on social media. So that was a thing. In terms of, look, I was always inclined to dismiss this accusation that the people speaking out against, that's an easy thing to say. No, there's no one who's really against me. The people against me, they're being bought off by my enemies. It's not real. I think that's a conspiratorial way of thinking, or no, probably if you're being criticized, it's because people disagree with you. And the most, the years of Russian influence, accusations that Russia was buying influence on social media. Remember, that was a claim that consumed the mainstream media for 2 or 3 years. And subsequently, we learned that the extent of that influencing, I'm not saying it didn't happen at all, was much less than had been presumed, or its impact was much less. Now, I don't know. There's been all these accounts on X. There's all these America First accounts saying, stand up if you're a real American. Real Americans believe this, and then you find out it's some Indian guy in India or in Pakistan or.
I saw two of the same exact. Are they called tweets still? Like in a row from 2 different accounts with 2 different faces yesterday, and I was like, Colin. Because I was like, maybe MTG's like doesn't like people criticizing her, or but I was like, wait, underneath that exact post, I'm like, wait, somebody said the same thing with the same laughing, crying emoji in the same exact text. I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Well, my bottom line is I don't know either. You hear accusations of various Middle Eastern governments paying for influence, Indians, the Chinese, the Russians. I don't know. All I can tell you, the viewing public, is no one is paying me to say what I'm saying except the Nexstar Corporation that owns this show.
But they're not telling you what to say.
That's the God's honest truth.
But so also in that interview, I noticed that she didn't. So she made sure not to come at President Trump. She was like, "That's still my friend." And he's like, "But he might not." Joy Behar, who's being funny, is like, "He might not love you back right now." She's like, "That's okay. He yells at everyone. I campaigned for him. I believe in what he's doing with immigration." But she drew the line at every other congressional male Republican, and she was very direct and defiant about she said basically, and I hope I can say this is a pissing contest between men in Congress, and she was saying why women should be the example at the table to show people how to have civilized discourse and move forward in some of these issues. She said she yelled at Mike Johnson, he's not doing enough, and so she was just basically taking a broad stroke brush and saying all men on the Republican side in Congress need to do better. And so what's your response kind of to that part of the conversation, that she was very, I know you don't like Congress in general as a whole, but she was very much targeting the men.
Well, I don't like women saying it's all men's fault.
Well,
I really don't appreciate that.
Well, that's what she said. I'm literally not misquoting her. She was very adamant at the table and saying, see, we're the example.
Well, some of the ladies of Congress have not exactly acquitted themselves, and I don't mean that in a partisan way, but the screeching of Nancy Mace and Jasmine Crockett and a bunch of very attention-seeking, performative people in both parties. But I am pleased to say that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not remotely one of them, and seems to be a serious thinker who cares about policy and ideas, and that's a good thing.
And you know what? Speaking of bringing people's past interviews up, the View table did a good job. Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny House, asking her questions about some of the conspiracy theories she platformed, and she actually admitted that she was caught in a deep dive on social media and online of conspiracy theories, and kind of she's like, I'm just like you. You guys don't know me that well, and you read clips that are taken out of context in my mind, and then judge me based off that. I went into some deep conspiracy theories, and I just realized I was wrong. Do you accept that, or do you think by the time you make it to Congress that somebody should be pretty much organizing their thought enough not to fall for a conspiracy theory?
I don't know. The perfect is the enemy of the good. And also, everyone got bamboozled by certain conspiracy theories. And in certain people got bamboozled by thinking things were conspiracy theories, again, to go back to COVID, as I always do. And then it turned out they were not conspiracy theories, like the idea that it, came from a lab initially, like the idea that the vaccine was not going to eradicate spread of the disease, although you said you're a crazy person for thinking those things, and then both those things turned, the vaccine certainly does not eradicate the spread of COVID, because we have widespread vaccination, we still have COVID, and it is certainly not proven, but it is the contention of the Energy Department, the CIA, and the FBI that it all came from a lab. So
I'm sure we're going to hear more from MTG in the next few days.
Coming up, California voters approved the state's redistricting initiative. We'll discuss what that means for next year's midterm election. Stay with us.